and welcome to In Conversation. 1 in 3 people globally do not have access to safe drinking water, and over half of the world's population does not have access to basic sanitation. Under a body known as One Shared World, youth leaders from around the world have proposed solutions through a resolution to the United Nations and its member states. Today, we are in conversation with Shagun Sandi as well as Sandi Gendi. Both of them are directors of global leadership at One Shared World. Sandi is a Canadian national, whereas Shagun is an Indian national. And we will talk to them about the gravity of the problem and how solutions can be offered, or the solutions that they've offered, how much of a meaningful impact can they have. So let's welcome Shagun as well as Sandi to the show. Welcome to the both of you to Doordarshan.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Let's begin with you, Shagun. Since the resolution was drafted under the umbrella of One Shared World and a few other organizations, tell us about what is One Shared World and how did you come to be associated with it?
Thank you so much for having us. One Shared World is really a new global social movement that began in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. With COVID-19, one of the things that has come into light is that our differences in terms of our nationalities, our ethnicities, our genders, our cultures don't really matter. A pandemic and a virus like COVID-19 doesn't discriminate at all. And so till all of us are not safe, until all of us are not, for instance, vaccinated or don't have access to public health, none of us are safe. And it was with this kind of realization that we need to see beyond these quote unquote man-made barriers that we live within and acknowledge this mutual interdependence that One Shared World was formed. And in on May 6th of 2020, we launched globally. We are a completely volunteer-run organization, completely youth-led, not only in terms of how young people usually just are implementers and foot soldiers of change. This resolution is something we're very proud of because of this idea of focusing on water, sanitation, and pandemic preparedness, but also every other function within One Shared World is completely youth-led by people like Sandi and me. And so it's just a pleasure to work with such a diverse and multicultural group of people who want to drive change.
And how did you become part of it?
So I actually was linked up. I was doing my master's at Columbia University in New York, and one of my professors, Dr. Vishakha Desai, who is again Indian national, is the chair of the Global Affairs Committee at Columbia. She's the one who connected me and said that, you're someone who's really motivated towards this. And so that's how I got connected. She's one of our senior advisors at One Shared World.
And Sandi, how did you come to be associated with One Shared World?
I was actually doing an internship with another NGO called at the time Friendship Ambassadors Foundation. And leading up to our semi-annual Youth Assembly conference, we heard Dr. Jamie Metzel speak. I was so motivated by his words and his thought process and everything. I went online after just to search up what One Shared World is, if it's of something of interest to me, how I can get involved. And then 1 year later, it's been an incredible year so far. It's been an incredible process. And we're very, very honored to be a part of it. And we're honored to have achieved what we've done and what we've achieved in the past year so far.
Sandi, you've co-drafted the resolution. Tell us about the focus on the 6th Sustainable Development Goal of One Shared World. Why did it choose to focus on that particular SDG?
Absolutely. So we actually decided to focus on WASHPAP following a comprehensive Rise or Fall Together report. And in that report, this was conducted within the early days of One Shared World. We realized, as well as, within the context of COVID-19, and as Shagun iterated earlier, we're only as safe as our most vulnerable populations are. Pandemics especially transcend borders and boundaries. And so how can we collectively be safe in an environment in which, they don't discriminate against these man-made borders? And so after, conducted our research on the most vulnerable communities, we realized there was a huge connection and a bridge between WASH, which we all know WASH as being water, hygiene, and sanitation. But it doesn't necessarily connect to pandemic protection. And as we've realized, we need safe sanitation practices, we need access to water, and so many more other essential services to rid the world of such pandemics. So we decided to focus on primarily SDG 6, universal access to water, and try to see, well, how can we connect it with some of the other SDG goals? In our process, we've realized that while certain actionable steps have, they've arisen from past UN resolutions, we're not at a point where we can achieve what we want, all the sustainable development goals by the date of 2030. And so we realized that, we're looking at things in an isolated manner when they all overlap with one another, they interconnect with one another. And, very much like our worlds, we're very interconnected in how we go about our global solving skills.
Right, we'll take that thought forward. But before that, Shagun, this is a youth-led movement, so to say. Was it a conscious decision to keep it youth-centric?
I think it was very natural. It was not something that was, that was a decision that was taken in a room. It was just so natural because from the early days of One Shared World, what we saw, and because I'm, a young person, born and brought up in India, lived here my whole life, worked in social development my whole life, what I've seen with a lot of nonprofits and other organizations is that young people usually just implement decisions and, carry forward campaigns. And we're the ones who are, going house to house really to get things done. But with One Shared World, because we as young people were associated from the first and early days of the conception of the movement, it was just natural that we were a part of these conversations. And so when we as young people said that, hey, listen, till people don't have access to sanitation, one of the things with COVID that became popular, and we on Indian television, for example, saw so many ads on hand washing. One of the things that, we were thinking about at One Shared World was, well, this is great, but a lot of people don't have access to basic sanitation facilities. People don't have access to bathrooms and soap and sanitizer and masks and stuff like that. And so it's all very, amazing and, helps us feel better when we say that we need access to hand washing and sanitation, but how do we truly make it a reality? And so with those conversations happening with people like Sandy and myself and this wonderful team of young people from across the world, it was just, it was later on that when we presented this to other people and they were like, oh, this is completely youth-led. And we were like, yeah, that's one of the aspects of it. It wasn't something that, was a conscious decision. It was just very organic. And I think that's how it should be globally in organizations.
Right, Sandy, how did it all come about? Because considering the diversity of the youth involved in working out this resolution, how did it all happen, from consultations to exchange of ideas, from meetings to the final draft?
Absolutely. So as you'll come to see, and as others will come to see, that One Shared World really shoots for the moon with a lot of our goals. So last year, our goal was to sort of try and get the G20 to recognize, WASH PAP. Because this was a new acronym coined by One Shared World. So what is WASH PAP? Why is it important? And why should we care about it? And from that point on, we actually were able to get the G20 to include our language in their communique. And that was our goal for 2020. This year, we said, let's take it one step further. Let's see how much we can do with the momentum and, the importance and significance of this topic in today's society. And so we initially collaborated with MUN Impact, an online MUN process for debates and, UN debates of the sorts. We've had multiple debates in that format, in that structure, in multiple languages with hundreds of students global wide, ranging from high school to university to middle school and everything in between. And following that, we compiled all these separate resolutions into one. And then that's when we really started to actually go into the drafting process, sort of balancing, these great aspirational ideas by these global youth with, balancing that with the sort of bureaucracy within the UN system. How do we actually make sure that this is a resolution that people are going to take seriously and consider with all its seriousness, its significance on the rest of the world? And so following that, we decided to modify our debate system just a little bit. And we kind of bridged the gap between these youth leaders these youth global change makers, their ideas and stuff. And we had these consultations with experts in the field, experts in WASH. And then we revealed the resolution to them, and we opened it up for them to have these open forum discussions, bridging the gap between WASH PAP in their locality with the expert advice and opinions of people actually working in that field, because youth have all the ideas, all the momentum of, great changes that they want to create in the world, but sometimes we lack the support and sometimes even the expertise. So bridging that gap in those consultations really made us take it one step further. We've collaborated with India Sanitation Coalition, and so far the Aga Khan Foundation's Global Encounters and the Aga Khan Academies, and actually making the consultations come to life. We've had multiple global youth. I can't even list the amount of countries we've had youth tune in from, but their ideas and their backgrounds and the diversity of their nationalities and their ideas and everything in between, their age groups. It really made sure that we, when drafting the resolution, we took into account all these different perspectives.
Right.
In the UN process, you have these member states, and they don't necessarily look at the perspectives of everything when they're drafting the resolution. So having it, at the grassroots level, all the way up to the global level, we've noticed, what is an achievable solution that we can come up with collectively to target the problems that we face globally.
Right, Shagun. So there were extensive consultations that were carried out. Tell us about the participation from India specifically. Sandi earlier spoke about how you collaborated with India Sanitation Coalition.
Sure. One of the things that I think about and I'm very proud of, and I think is India's superpower, is our population and our young people. I think, if someone asks me anywhere in the world, what is the one thing about India that is special, it is truly the amount of activism, engagement, and excitement that our young people have towards really driving change. And I think that is what we as One Shared World capitalized on. We didn't have to do anything. We just had to create a platform and invite these people in. And then they just took it and ran with it. So one of the things we did with this was, like Sandi was talking about earlier, we had a partnership with Model United Nations Impact, and we had multiple debates in Mumbai and Delhi and Lucknow and other states of India. But then we partnered with the India Sanitation Coalition, which is also doing so much work under Naina Lal Kidwai for this kind of agenda. And so with that, we brought together these two worlds. And like Sandi said, we married the venerable kind of leadership that this big group that is the ISC has. And, these big kind of UN experts and WASH experts had at ISC, to the kind of enthusiasm and drive that young people have. And I think, this is one of the things that's very, very important, is that a lot of people across the world believe that, young people just want to, go out and sloganeer and kind of campaign and do all of that. But I think what One Shared World has shown us as a prime example of what is coming out next in the world is that we don't just want to talk. We don't just want to say things and give important speeches and then forget about it and sleep at night. What we want to do is take what our leaders have, the kind of expertise they have, the kind of backgrounds they've had and the experiences they've seen on the field, and marry that with our passion for change. And I think that kind of drive is what culminated into this resolution, which when you read it, you see that it's not just about saying that our leaders have done nothing, or about the fact that, we are living in a world with failed infrastructure. We're saying, we understand that there are problems and we understand that there has been inaction in the past, but here is how we need you to take action. These are the things that you need to work on. And we list out examples of, for example, investing in infrastructure, working towards financing sanitation as a basic need, working towards ensuring the spread of education around issues of water, sanitation, health, hygiene, and pandemic preparedness. And so kind of really taking that and telling people and telling our leaders that, hey, this is what we need you to do. These are the steps we need you to take, was what the resolution was, really, really special in doing. But beyond that, we take that a step further. We're not just saying that, the resolution is created and done and, there's a nice bow tied and we've put it in a corner. We've also created advocacy toolkits. So what we're saying is that now that young people have created this resolution, How is it that you, as a young person, who is listening to people like Sandy and me talk about this, or who's listening and watching debates happen about water sanitation, what can you do? Sitting at home, how is it that you can take part in advocating for clean access to water? How is it that you can advocate for making sure pandemics don't occur again in the kind of frequency that is predicted by world experts, right? And so we have advocacy toolkits which really spell out even letters that young people can write to their leaders in saying that we want to volunteer for these initiatives, but also in saying that we need you to really, really kind of pioneer and spearhead these initiatives. We're also doing advocacy training sessions where young people are trained to identify issues around them.
Right. Shagun, also, India has taken a lot of strides towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2014. As the world knows, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had announced the Swachh Bharat mission, under which a lot of initiatives were taken. India became open defecation free in 5 years in 2019. In 2019, we also saw the launch of the Jal Jeevan mission, which aims at ensuring that every household in India has access to tapped water. Now, having said that, during your consultations, what were the thoughts that was shared on Indian initiatives?
Sure. And I think, even before the consultations that happened, and one thing that I was very proud of was that we had a kind of conversation and a panel discussion called Water and Sanitation for All. And we invited people like Shah Chaudhry, who's this leader for access to water in Bangladesh. We invited former Union Minister Suresh Prabhu, and he was one of the speakers. And one of the things that he said in that event, in that panel discussion, which you can watch on our website, oneshare.world, was he reaffirmed the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi as a champion for water and sanitation and the agenda of WashPap. And for the first time, he committed India's support to the goal of WashPap. So it was a very big thing for us, because it was kind of groundbreaking to see a minister committing to an agenda of WashPap. And like Sandy said before, WashPap is really a word coined by us. And he said, and I quote, that I hope that the goal of WashPap for all will not just remain a goal. I look forward to the world community playing a key role, and India's support is vital to making this happen. So that was truly, truly groundbreaking to see that kind of affirmation towards our work and the goals that we're working towards.
Right, Sandy, it's been said here before that this is not the first time that the world is making efforts towards achieving universal access to safe drinking water, sanitation, or even preparing for future pandemics. There are some programs that exist as far as access to safe water as well as sanitation is concerned, but there seem to be gaps. And of course, we are lagging in implementation. The pandemic has come up and a lot of resources have been committed to that end. What is it in terms of effective steps that this resolution offers, which is not there currently in the existing programs?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great question, and a question that we don't necessarily have a solution to in the current resolutions that have already been approved. There's a couple of themes that we wanted to highlight and emphasize in our resolution that are not necessarily covered with any past resolutions. The first being that interconnectedness is our world. We're only as safe as the most vulnerable populations around us. Pandemics transcend borders and boundaries. There's no way around that. And past resolutions kind of take a nationalistic interest towards certain concepts of WashPap. They kind of just say, well, my country is responsible for this. And they don't consider that the manifestation of pandemics go beyond, their man-made border. They don't consider how interconnected we are, not only with our amazing global solutions, but also our global problems. Our global problems affect us all equally, with varying degrees, of course. And so we must recognize that we're only as safe as the most vulnerable populations around us. Another thing is that we highlighted, we touched upon this, the bridging the gap between WASH and PAP. Within the rise of COVID-19, we've realized as well, and this is just an iteration at this point, but so many different populations to a certain degree have been affected even more adversely than other populations, say, for example, in cities. What happens in a metropolitan urban city is going to differ from what happens in a rural city. Similarly, not just about the effective solutions we want to implement, but access to information and knowledge. So one of the themes that we highlight in the resolution is being able to disseminate knowledge and information, and not just to say this is what you have to do, but to really enable and empower people to, seek innovative solutions towards these problems that not only will help their problems or will help solve their problems and their populations in their locality, but will also help grow the economy within the local community. And we really highlight the fact that innovation is needed and how we can, transfer knowledge of innovation to these rural communities is another great example of how we can help one another, overcome our obstacles and barriers that have been implemented due to, lack of access to knowledge on WashPap or just due to pandemics in general. And that's another main thing. One final theme that we really highlight and emphasize in the resolution is the power of youth. Um, just from gaining knowledge about what's happening in their local community to identifying certain solutions that are unique to them, but could help a lot of other rural and local communities global wide. How can we make sure we can bridge the gap between what is happening in one little city or one little rural community anywhere in the world with another rural community that's experiencing similar problems in another side of the world? How can we share our knowledge and information worldwide to make sure that we, in a sense, rid the world of the problems that we face collectively? Because at the end of the day, we all experience the same problems. It's just we experience it to varying degrees and effects. And within the scope of that, a rural community in Canada might potentially experience the same problems as a rural community in India. It's just a matter of being able to share that knowledge with somebody else on the other side of the border and being able to just say, hey, this is working for us, perhaps it'll work for you too. And if not, here's another potential solution for you to implement that potentially may help you rid the problem of, the global health issues that you're currently facing, but it could also help you rid another problem.
Sandy, achieving many of these goals requires a lot of financial resources to be committed. Currently, the UN and World Bank are running programs to fund these programs, but there seems to be a gap here. What solutions does the resolution propose on this?
Absolutely. So we were very, very careful in how we wanted to implement certain funding measures because we want to make sure at the end of the day, this is accessible and feasible for a lot of the countries and member states that, would take part in this. So our main way that we kind of wanted to highlight funding is through implementation of innovative financial measures. And keyword here being innovation financial measures. The reason being is we recognize that there's only so much funding that there could be in the world, but it's just how you do with that information and with that funding that could really take something and multiply it by a large percentage. So one of the things is we talked about is making funding for water, health, and sanitation services a common national and international priority by implementing these WashPap initiatives, by disseminating information on how local communities can, grow the local economy to, in a sense, invested into financial measures necessary for WashPap services. Another thing is being able to help, the developed countries already, being able to get them to help and assist the developing countries with funds, but not necessarily funds, but with access to information and knowledge on, for example, health practices, on sanitation practices, on what they can do to help, their local economy and their local community. And then that, in a sense, your ability to help another country, don't look at it as, it's a charity for everybody. No, this is a solution to a problem that you're currently facing. Just because, if I'm country A and I help country B with something, it's not a charity. I'm helping them because at the end of the day, I'm going to be affected by it at the same time, to the same extent, to the same degree, and varying instances as well. So changing your mindset about what funding can do to solve a problem is very, very important. And that's kind of why we emphasize innovative financial measures. We emphasize it's the best and smartest investment that we can make in our collective future to unite all of us together and to make sure that we rid the world of the problems that we face collectively.
Absolutely. So let's hope this leads to meaningful change. That's all the time that we have for this. Thank you, Sandi and Shagun, for having joined us on In Conversation.